don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear about it.
They don't.
They're doing what they're doing, and they are absolutely determined to get to where they're going, which is this very high spiritual state of awareness and ability. And as far as they're concerned, your concerns about Scientology only exist for one of two reasons. Either one, you have bought into a whole slew of lies and false information that exists about Scientology. Either that's the case, or two, you are what they refer to as an antisocial personality or a suppressive person. And if you're an antisocial personality or a suppressive person, that puts you in the same category as Hitler, Dillinger, Napoleon, Mao Zedong. I mean, really bad people in history. These are people who mean harm, who want to do evil, who get pleasure out of, suppressing other people. That's why they're called suppressive people, because they hold other people down. So it's one of those two things. So either one, I'm going to convince you to stop forwarding all these lies and bullshit that you've been reading about Scientology. I'm going to have to convince you that those things are lies. They're not true. And I'm involved in something very wonderful and very spiritually progressive and very helpful to my life. And if I can't convince you of that, then that means you're just an SP, and I need to disconnect from you because you mean me harm. You don't mean good things for me. You mean me harm. That's the mindset. And it's very easy to get people into this mindset when they are convinced of the rightness of what they're doing, and they're easily then convinced that anybody who wouldn't want them to do those good, right, wonderful things mean them harm. And that's the standard way that cult leaders in almost every cult operate, is they convince their followers that this is so wonderful and so great that anybody who would be against it would be the kind of person who would poison babies. I mean, what the hell's wrong with those people? This is so obviously wonderful.
We see it all the time. Yeah, we deal with it daily. I mean, look at we've had people come on that if you don't agree with them, you're going to hell. Literally. I mean, look at the young creationists. Look at Ken Hovind. Well, you're going to die one of these days, and if you don't agree with me that you can't walk with dinosaurs, you're going to hell. I can't do a Ken Hovind. I'm not dumb enough to do it.
Don't look at Ken Hovind.
But that's what we hear.
Don't do that to yourself.
You want to try Ken Hovind? There's some people that actually do a good Ken Hovind. I'm not one of them.
Oh, I wasn't saying you were doing a bad impression. I was saying you said look at Ken Hovind, and I was telling people not to look at Ken Hovind. Like, don't do that.
Look at him on our videos. You can watch those. Don't watch it.
You just didn't get my joke because you're an SP, Steve. That's all it boils down to.
I'm a suppressive.
Completely suppressive. Obviously suppressive. I mean, look at the beard.
This is it. You can't have a beard like this in Scientology.
Oh,
get out of here. No.
Chris, listen, if you start talking about his beard, he will not shut up.
Wait, I want to know. Now I'm curious. Now I'm curious.
No, you can have what you did. No, the reason that's funny is because in Scientology they are rabidly, I mean, like really rabidly against psychiatry.
Yes.
And
so people who have goatees, they look like psychs, right? They look like psychiatrists. Like
Freud. That's who he looks like. It looks like a disheveled Freud.
That's right.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but other times it's not. Giggity.
That's right.
So what was it that finally clicked for you? Before we go there, actually, let's back up and talk about what you actually did for the organization. What was your role, and what kind of things would you do from day to day?
Yeah, I did a lot of things, and it's actually, my days were pretty busy because you were kind of kept that way. Everything in Scientology, especially in the Sea Org, is very. It's always kind of high pressure, call center pressure. Like, there's always an emergency of some kind going on. So your mind is constantly like engaged in handling some emergency or some flap or some problem. And so this was kind of how the days would roll one into the next. I did a lot of things. I did supervision of classes. I was like a teacher. I did counseling. I sort of was in an executive position overseeing the delivery of classes and counseling. I specialized in that for quite a while. Then when I joined the Sea Organization, I was one of the jobs of the Sea Organization is to manage all of Scientology all over the world. So you go from these city level offices, these class 5 organizations, up to the Sea Org, that you're moving up in the hierarchy. And so management is divided up into 7 different arbitrary continental zones. There's like the Western United States and the Eastern United States and Canada and Latin America and Australia and Europe and the United Kingdom. These are all different continental zones within Scientology's management structure. I was in the Western United States, which is physically, geographically one of the largest zones. And my job was to oversee the delivery of all of the classes and all of the counseling services that Scientology churches provided all throughout the Western United States, everything west of the Mississippi. So I did that for about 8 years, and that was an extremely stressful job. In fact, so much so that one night I just kind of flipped and took off. This was when I was working in those blue buildings in Hollywood in California. And took off for a few days, got in a lot of trouble, came back. And then I was a salesperson. I did what's called the RPF, which is the Rehabilitation Project Force, which is kind of like a Scientology re-education internment camp kind of thing. That took me 3 years. That's a whole story in itself. We could talk about that for hours. It's a very, very intense experience. And then I finished that, and then I'd made books for a little while. They have a bookmaking publishing facility. I worked there for about a year. And then I got out and I started doing recruitment, and I started getting new Sea Org members. Just like I was, signed up for that billion-year contract, I was going around signing other people up for it. And I spent about a year doing that. And then I started working on projects opening up new churches or renovated churches all over the Western United States. I opened up Las Vegas, Orange County. I was involved in Seattle's opening and Twin Cities, Minnesota. The St. Paul Church there is where I spent a lot of my time. And that was what I was doing when I decided I needed to leave in 2012. And I hit the road and stopped being a Sea Org member. And then shortly thereafter, I stopped being a Scientologist altogether.
Oh, wow. So how was your introduction to the real world, I guess, without Scientology? Because over that amount of time, it has to be ingrained in you, and to not have that with you anymore has to be kind of a culture shock.
Do you have to say the least, or some kind?
I call it being in recovery. And because coming out of a cultic experience, especially for second gen members, is not something you don't just turn it on and turn it off, right? So it's been a progressive series of steps over the last many years, peeling the onion layers off of belief and false information and nonsense. And we refer to it as an onion because there's layers of belief. There's layers of ideas you have to kind of core out of you. And there's no easy way to do it. You just got to take one layer off, and then that exposes another layer. And then you kind of start dealing with that. And then there's another layer. And then you think you're done. Oh, yeah, no, here's some more to deal with. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So
I gotta imagine
that's kind of
just a lot of conditioning.
Yeah.
I mean, I did 6 years, right, in the Navy, and that you get conditioned in 6 years. You just think a specific way. You cannot be in the military and not have that happen to you, because that's what they do. That's part of the whole process, and I get that. I have nothing, against that. It's part of being in the military. But I can't imagine 25 years of being this indoctrinated into something, and then all of a sudden realizing it's wrong, and still not having those certain mannerisms, certain things that you do like you did all the other times before, right? Because even in the military, you get a condition to do certain things and to think certain ways. Mm-hmm. So even after you got out, did you still have that, or as you were peeling away these levels, did you go, you know what, I've got to stop thinking like this? Yeah, I don't. Were you susceptible at any time to maybe going to some other organization similar, just because you like the camaraderie, or like the
or religion,
the cult-like atmosphere, or religion?
okay, no, I was not susceptible to joining another cultic group, but yes, anyone and everyone are susceptible to social pressures and the desire to, to be in a tribe, for sure. Everybody. What? That's a very, very natural instinct we all have. I avoided the cult hopping phenomenon, which does happen, because I lucked into, through my internet searching right after I got out of Scientology, and I started looking around at the real world and how was I going to deal with this. These decades of indoctrination, and not really being yet fully aware of just how deep that rabbit hole goes. I mean, I knew it was pretty bad, but I thought, when I first started, I was like, I'll give myself a year. I'll be okay. I'll be able to move on. Yeah, right. I lucked into critical thinking. I lucked into skepticism and sort of the skeptic movement, or the skeptic camps, so to speak. What I was doing was I was researching, how did this happen to me? How does this happen to people? How do people fall for nonsense like this? And this was after I'd already spent about 4 or 5 months stripping away some of the most obvious bad indoctrination, like homophobia. That's a very strong part of the indoctrination of Scientology, is becoming very homophobic. The anti-psych stuff. Oh yeah, we can talk about that. The anti-psychiatry stuff was the other thing I tackled straight away, because I realized I'd been so thoroughly indoctrinated against psychiatry, and yet I was now looking to psychology for some answers. And I thought, I'm going to have to deal with this. So I do I think about psychiatry as a bad thing because L. Ron Hubbard told me to, or because it's really a bad thing? So I started researching that. And once I kind of dealt with the homophobia and was able to strip that away, and dealt with the anti-psych crap, and realized that psychiatry is both good and bad and depends on when and where and how you're looking at it, then I sort of freed up some thinking, and then I started looking at, okay, why do smart people fall for this stuff? I was surrounded my entire life by extremely smart people. I was not surrounded by morons. My father was one of the smartest people I ever met. Many Scientologists are engineers, doctors, even scientists. I mean, these are educated, smart people. So it's not. So I was figuring that it's not, IQ is not a defense against this. So what's going on? And that's when I stumbled on an article on my Google search. I'll never forget this. And the article was the Baloney Detection Kit, and it was the chapter from Carl Sagan's book, A Demon Haunted World. And I thought I thought I'd found. I mean, it was very revelatory to me to learn about the things that I needed to know that I never learned my entire life about critical thinking, about how to think, and what makes something legit, what's evidence, what's reason, what are facts. I mean, these were things I had not obviously had very clear in my head. So that's when I started learning about that. And I was very fortunate to get into learning about that stuff very straight away coming out of the cult experience. And so I read A Demon Haunted World. I was absolutely sold on the need for critical thinking and skepticism. And I then found, I was living in Minnesota at the time. I then I found this thing called meetup.com, which was like, what? Mm-hmm. People just meet up? What? This was another, wow, this is great, So I found a local skeptics group on Meetup, and I was like, fuck yeah. So, can I swear? Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I guess why the fuck not? Yeah, why not?
Okay, good. All right. Yeah. So I was very excited about this. So I went down to the local place where they were meeting, and it was called Drinking Skeptically. So it was just a group of skeptics who met, every few weeks to talk and bullshit and drink. And so I showed up there and I said, hi, I'm a skeptic. This is really interesting. I want to know more about this. And then I said, you know, I used to be in Scientology, and the guy who ran the meetup just about fell off his chair. He was just like, you what? And he was so excited, right? Oh, he was so excited. And this was the very